and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. Sorry, there's been a short hiatus of episodes. I had to have surgery, so I figured it would be time to get back to it with a short little episode today. So, let's get into it, shall we? Grace Emma Rose Millane was born on December 2nd, 1996, in Wickford, Essex, England. After high school, she went to University of Lincoln, where she earned her bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. In 2018, the now 21-year-old decided to go on a solo backpacking trip for her gap year, which she started in South Africa. Then, on November 18th, she arrived in New Zealand, highlighting her trip through social media posts and checking in with family. By the 1st of December, however, all contact is lost and no new posts are made. By December 2nd, she's considered missing, and that's on her 22nd birthday. Early on December 1st, Grace is seen on CCTV meeting up with a man named Jesse Shane Kempson, with whom she met on Tinder. The two went to a mall and ended up at Andy's restaurant, then are seen leaving. The last sighting of Grace that was captured on CCTV was December 1st at 7:20 p.m. At the time, she was wearing a black dress. As the CCTV reveals that Jesse is the last person she's seen with, he's obviously a person of interest. He's asked to come to speak with police. He comes in willingly and even agrees to a voluntary DNA sample. During the interview, he does start to make some odd statements, however, and he contradicts himself several times, while appearing to be semi-truthful. However, police in New Zealand can't hold a person for any length of time without charges, and so, after the initial interview, he's free to go while police continue to investigate. They even keep a tail on Jesse, so that once all the evidence is in, they'd be able to arrest him quickly if it turns out he's the person they need. On December 8th, again, Jesse is picked up by police and brought to a room at the station to speak with him for a second time. This is following many developments found in the investigation. And this time, he reports that after Andy's, they went to a Mexican restaurant, then on to a club, and there Jesse claims to have had quite a few drinks. During their night, Grace says in text messages that she clicks quite well with him, that she would let the person know that she was talking to how it went in the morning. And from Jesse's statements, CCTV begins to be identified. Of the two of them going all places he mentioned. Then they continue watching the two going to Jesse's hotel room. According to Jesse, Grace decided once they got to the hotel room to bring bondage into the bedroom. He talked about having rough intercourse with her, per her request, and afterwards, he took a shower, claiming to have fallen asleep in the shower, then waking up and crawling into bed, saying that he thought Grace had already left. In the morning, that's when he noticed she was still lying on the floor, blood coming out of her nose. He said he was terrified, and so he went out and bought a suitcase. Then, the unimaginable. He put Grace in that suitcase. After, he is placed under arrest, and police ask if he's ready to take them to her, and Jesse says yes, and he takes the police out to Scenic Drive, where Grace is buried in a suitcase. Meanwhile, investigation of his room reveals blood spatter, a large pool of blood in one area, but it's extended throughout the room. Detective Inspector Scott Beard makes the announcement that Grace's death was homicide. The Prime Minister of New Zealand makes a public apology to the family, reporting that she should have been safe, and she wasn't, and for that, the Prime Minister was very sorry. Per New Zealand tradition, a candlelight vigil is held and a haka is done in her honor. Hundreds of individuals attend. On November 4th, 2019, the trial begins for the murder of Grace. Grace's family flies in for the trial. Jessie pleads not guilty. Autopsy reveals that she was strangled to death. And in order to do that manually, you'd have to hold pressure for 5 to 10 minutes. At some point, Grace would have passed out and stopped fighting. The fact that he kept pressure on after she was unconscious is a point that prosecution says that this turns to an intentional murder. Prosecution further continues that even if he claimed to have just found her, he should have rang for help. Instead, looking back on his browser history, he looks at a few sites, then moves on to pornography. After watching porn, he took several photos of Grace at the time in which they believe she has already been killed. At 8 a.m., Jesse is seen in the elevator. He gets out and buys a suitcase, as he said in the interview, and he brings it back to his room. And CCTV begins a series of videos that lay out a play-by-play for what likely happened. So, at 8:32 a.m., he is seen leaving and buying cleaning supplies. By 9:33, he's out of his room again, this time to rent a car. By 3:57 p.m., he goes out on another Tinder date. May I remind you that Grace is still in the hotel room at this point. The woman said that Jesse had been looking for a bag for all the sports equipment he had, but had found one, according to him. He went on to say that lots of his friends were police and that there are a number of people going missing, but the dogs couldn't seem to find the bodies because they can only smell to a depth of 5 feet. So if you just bury someone 6 feet down, they won't be able to tell. That Tinder date, I felt uncomfortable, of course, with him, and they parted after their date. At 5:29 p.m., Jesse goes to a drugstore and asks the pharmacist for something to ease the itching on his hands. After he is seen with more cleaning products, along with a rug cleaner. At 9:21 p.m., Jesse takes Grace out in a suitcase. At this time, he simply puts her in the trunk of his rented car. At 6:21 a.m. the next day, he's in his car and makes a pit stop to buy a shovel. When he returns, he's barefoot. He changes, then buys a second suitcase, identical to that first one that he had had. He washes down the rental car and leaves the shovel in one of the bays at the car wash. 5 days later, he is seen getting into a taxi with a bag, and when he returns from his trip to the water, he doesn't have that bag anymore. At 2:20 p.m., police are at the hotel, and Jesse walks up and sees them, and sort of just casually walks away upon seeing them. Defense tried to say that Grace initiated the actions that ultimately caused her death, that she wanted to be choked, that it was an accident. An ex-girlfriend chimes in, however, to speak of a historical abuse, that when the two were together, Jesse would threaten her. On more than one occasion, reported that he's going to kill her, that he would choke her repeatedly. When he was mad, he'd go to the kitchen and grab knives and hold them to her throat. She went on to shame the defense for how they spoke to her and other women, that you shouldn't degrade the victim, which I agree is pathetic. Another Tinder date gave testimony over the phone, and you can hear the way the defense attempts to make everything her fault, not Jesse, who clearly has a historical pattern of violence. Jesse, for his part, doesn't testify during trial, so they use the recorded interviews. On November 22nd, 2019, at 5:45 p.m., the foreman read the verdict. Guilty. Sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years. After he was convicted of several other charges, including assault, assault with a weapon, and sexual violation and threats to kill stemming from his ex-girlfriend, for which he received 7.5 years in another trial, along with a second rape trial and charge on a different British tourist, which happened a month prior to Grace's murder, and the sentence for this of which was another 3.5 years. Unfortunately, it came out in the media later that one of the women had reported the rape in 2017. The police informed the victim that there was just simply not enough information to prosecute, and it would be a, quote, he said, she said, end quote, case. As such, they dismissed this woman, which allowed Jesse to victimize other women and ultimately kill Grace. Jesse filed an appeal against his conviction, which was dismissed by New Zealand's Court of Appeals on December 18th, 2020. Since her death, her mother, Gillian Millane, and cousin Hannah O'Callaghan, founded the charity Love Grace to help women affected by domestic violence. The charity collects handbags and fills them with toiletries for victims of abuse. As of December 2023, which is the last information I could find, they had donated 15,600 handbags in the United Kingdom and internationally, which is the only bright spot in this case. I know this is short, but I thought it was important. And remember, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.